dimension of Money Revealed is exploring entrepreneurism and understanding the entrepreneur mindset and how to create wealth through these types of initiatives. I was excited to sit and interview Tucker Max. Tucker Max is an extraordinarily bright and driven and focused human being, and he pulls no punches. He just tells it like it is. He's got a storied past that is quite amazing, almost seems fictional, quite frankly, and his views on production, on work, on wealth accumulation, and entrepreneurism are just spectacular. So enjoy my interview with Tucker Max. Tucker, thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Of course.
As I've gotten to know you and now work with you and your company on my book, etc., really fascinating ideas and orientations you have towards entrepreneurism and wealth development, etc. So let's just start with your story. Like,
right.
What was your upbringing like, and what was your path to get to where you are?
My parents were divorced when I was very little, like a year and a half. I grew up mostly with my mom in Kentucky. Then my dad actually was an entrepreneur. He had, still has, several restaurants in South Florida. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny, like my mom always worked, kind of normal person, worked for other people. And she wasn't really very good at life. So she was fired a lot from jobs. And then my dad, so I kind of saw firsthand the difference between working for other people and having your own thing. My dad had his own companies, and he, had real nice house and cars and money and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But my mom and I always struggled because she didn't do her own thing, mm-hmm. So that was growing up. And then for undergrad, I went to college, and then I was kind of
you did very well academically.
Yeah. So I went to the University of Chicago for undergrad. I graduated in 3 years, summa from there, and then I was kind of a coward. And I say it like I wish I could tell you some amazing story about how smart and brave I was as a teenager, 20s. I wasn't. I was an idiot. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, when you go to a big, high-level school, you generally think that at least when I was going to college, your path, either you're a management consultant or you're an iBanker or you're a lawyer. Right.
And you had those paths available to you as far as the investment banking and so on.
Yeah.
Because economics you studied in school?
Yeah, I was a econ and law letters double major at University of Chicago. So I ended up dropping econ so I could graduate in 3 years, but that was still kind of my path. And so I interviewed Morgan Stanley and Goldman. I got offers at the iBanks, and then McKinsey and KPMG. I got offers at consulting firms. And I ended up turning those down because I had, friends who were older who worked there, and they're like, no, this is terrible. It's a sweatshop. You're going to work 100 hours, Even the ones who liked it were like, oh man, your life looks miserable. Like you're in the office 16 hours a day, and then you go do like blow and go hang out with hookers. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like I'm talking about the iBankers. Right. Like all of my friends that were iBankers were like just miserable, awful people. And so I decided not to do that. But instead of realizing, maybe I need to get out of the system and go build my own thing, I was way too arrogant and stupid to do that. So I thought, I'll just go to law school, right? Mm-hmm. And so I ended up getting an academic scholarship to Duke, which was like, I think still is, but at the time was a top 10 law school. Mm-hmm. And so I went there, and law school was easy and stupid and worthless, at least for me. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, I realized after the first semester I didn't have to go to class at all. So like all I had to do was basically read the textbook a week before exams, and then I would do very well. And so it's funny, I ended up spending the second semester of my third year in Cancun. Like I just was like, all right, I'm going to go to Cancun because I don't need to be in class. So like from February through April, I just went and got a job, like with one of those all these groups that kind of take college kids down there.
Right.
I just got a job as on-site staff, and so it was like I got paid to drink and party and hang out with girls. It was great.
And what would you do? Fly back for exams? Or?
Yeah, I flew back for exams. And there's only one exam at the end. Oh. You know what's funny is they actually changed the rules of law school because of me. No, seriously, they did. I graduated in 2001. I think in 2005 or 2006. After my books came out, I kind of became well known. I talked about my books, how law school's a joke and whatever. They put in what's known as the Tucker Max rule, that law schools, to be ABA accredited, have to actually take attendance. Before that, they didn't care if you went to class or not. They never took attendance. It didn't matter because they assumed if you were at a law school that you were going to go anyway and you were already whatever. And I proved that that this school itself is a complete joke and you don't have to go at all. And then I talked about it to everybody. Everyone knew this, but no one had really admitted it. And so I wrote about it and whatever. And so they got all fussy and upset. And
They call it the Tucker Max rule.
I mean, like, I know someone who was on the ABA sort of committee, and they were like, yeah, we didn't officially call it that, but they're like, we passed that because of you. Because you wrote all that stuff and made us look stupid. Well, maybe your rules are stupid, and maybe your school is dumb. Anyway, so I became a lawyer, and then I got fired 3 weeks into my first job as a lawyer, and it was justified. I was a reckless, unguided missile, and that story is like in my first book. And so I got fired, and then I went to work for my dad, and it took longer, but then he fired me from the family business. Mm-hmm. So I literally, in a 6-month period or a year period, got fired from the two things that I trained for. And like, I got fired, like being a summer associate, it's impossible to get fired. I got fired. Who gets fired then from working for their family business? I got fired. So after that, I was not doing so well. When I was, in Florida working for my dad, I hated it. I hated South Florida. It's just like a cultural wasteland, right? And so I just could not stand any aspect of it. And I would write emails to my friends about all the dumb things I was doing because I was depressed and hated my life. And they thought like these emails were hilarious. And so after my dad fired me, they're like, look, man, you're not good at the things that you train for, like law and business, but these emails you've written are like the funniest thing we've ever read. You should do that. And I'm like, what am I, some bitch? I'm gonna go be a writer? Get out of here. Like, I'm a man. Like, I'm never gonna do, right? In case you remember, I'm 25. I'm an idiot, right? Yeah. And so that's an idiot narrative. That's what you think when you're an idiot. I ignored them for a while. And then like, they had started forwarding my emails to like other people outside of
the circle?
Yeah, our social circle. And so I started getting my emails forwarded back to me from like random people that like, I went to high school with or college, right? And they're like, hey man, have you seen this email? It's really funny. It sounds like you. And I'm like, jackass, scroll to the bottom. Remember email forwards, right? Like scroll to the bottom, look at that. I wrote that. This is in 2001, 2002. Right. This is even before MySpace or Facebook. Right. And so that's when I realized, okay, maybe my friends were right. That's when I started to get unstupid and started to like look at evidence of the world and base my reality on that instead of what I thought it should be. And so then I applied, or I tried to get I took like the 5 funniest emails and I sent them to every publisher in New York. And I mean, children's book publisher, cookbooks, I didn't care. Yeah. If you were a publisher, you got a submission, and agents too. 500 or 1,000 query letters. This is, obviously back when snail mail was still kind of like the way you did this in publishing. Right. And I'm not exaggerating when I say 90% of people ignored me. Mm-hmm. Probably 10% sent rejection. Yeah, I got about 100, maybe 50 to 100 rejection letters. Mm-hmm. Most of them were form letters, right? There were 3 or 4 people who actually took the time to write personalized rejection letters, saying things like, this is the worst thing I've ever read. You should never write again. You shouldn't even write an email. Maybe you should consider killing yourself. Like, it was, they were pretty brutal. Because I guess if you write a personalized rejection, it kind of hit a nerve in you, right? Yeah. But at that point, I had gotten so many of my emails forwarded back to me that I was like, you people whose job it is to know what books are going to sell are all idiots. This is actually a part where stupidity helped me. And arrogance helped me. And so I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about, so I'm going to go do this myself. And but at the time, it was, again, this is 2002. Mm-hmm. So this is before even MySpace, right? Like the word blog didn't really exist at this point. So I learned how to program HTML, and I got a GeoCities site, and I put my stuff up on GeoCities, just the emails. Like I just put my writing up for free on the internet before this was a thing. And it blew up. And MTV came and filmed the segment on me about like online dating or something, because I wrote about like dating stories, a lot of it. And then like this girl that I dated sued me, and that became a huge First Amendment case. Wow. And then it kind of took off from there, and then publishers came back, and then I did my first book called I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. It came out in 2006. Mm-hmm. It hit the New York Times bestseller list out of nowhere, like 0 reviews, 0 coverage, nothing. But because I had an online presence and I've been putting my stuff out for free, I had an email list and all that, I had, whatever, 60, 70,000 people on my list at the time. So I sold 5,000 copies the first week, and then 3,500 the second week. And so it spent 2 weeks on the list, and it did pretty well, which is like, now that's kind of the standard. But it was the first blog to bestseller ever. And then it kind of fell off a little, and then it just slowly picked up. And then in late 07, it went back on the list, and it stayed on until 2012.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 straight years, never off the list. And then I did 2, it eventually became a #1 bestseller, and then I did 2 more #1 bestsellers, Assholes Finish First and Hilarity Ensues. And then in 12, I just eventually, like, all my stories are about the dumb things you do when you're in your 20s, right? Drinking, partying, throw up on yourself. And I was especially dumb, so I had a lot of stories. But eventually, they kind of ran out, right? Yeah. And so I retired in 12 from writing that stuff. But I'd sold millions and millions of books, so I didn't have to work. I was doing pretty well. And I spent a few years, I kind of got into angel investing because I had a lot of friends in tech. And like everyone in tech, a lot of really smart people who make great products, and they're all terrible marketers, the worst. And so they would like come to me and be like, "Oh, I've got this really cool app or whatever." I'm like, "Oh, that is cool." I'm like, and they're like, "But no one's using it." I'm like, "Well, how do you describe it?" And they would tell me, I'm like, "Oh, that's terrible. No, you should say this." And then they would like go do it, and then they would get thousands of downloads or whatever, and they'd come back to me like, "Oh, like, hey, I realized I had like a skill set." Because you work in entertainment. You only eat what you kill. You've got to be engaging. You've got to have it together. And so it's like once you make it entertainment, then you almost by default know how to market and tell stories.
Right.
And so I ended up realizing I had a lot of skills in those areas. And so I ended up both investing and advising a lot of tech companies and kind of helping a lot of them grow. And I did pretty well there. Then the big kind of thing that I'm working on now that this is my sort of next thing in life. In 2014, I went to an entrepreneur dinner, and this woman came up to me, and she had kind of a big company in fashion, and she's like, "Hey, like I know you've written books. I tried to write a book. It's too much of a pain in the butt. I have a family. I have this big company I have to run, but people have been asking me to write this book for a decade. Right. How do I get this book out of my head without having to sit down at a computer for a year and open a vein over the keyboard?" Like she's like, "I just can't. I don't have the time. I don't have the ability, whatever." And I was like, "Are you asking me how to write a book without writing it?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "You can't do that. That's ridiculous, right?" And I'm like, being kind of the snobby elitist writer. Right. And so she stops me and she says, "Tucker, are you an entrepreneur?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. This is an entrepreneur dinner." She's like, "I don't think so." I'm like, what are you talking about?" She's like, "Well, a real entrepreneur would help me solve my problem and not lecture me about hard work." And I was like,
"That's great."
Like, like Baf on gold, but she was totally right. She was so right. It was one of those gut punches where like then of course I became obsessed with what she was talking about because like I was wrong. And so I spent the next few months obsessed with how do I get a book out of her head without her having to become a writer. Right. And I mean, I'm dumb, so it took me a while to figure it out. But eventually I was like, oh, of course, people figured this out 2,000 years ago. Just use scribes. Like Socrates never wrote a word down. Plato did, right? Jesus never wrote a word down. The apostles did. Right. Buddha never wrote anything down. His disciples did. Malcolm X had Alex Haley. Marco Polo had his cellmate who was a scribe. Like, good on the list. Like, we have all these amazing, iconic works of literature in the Western canon because of scribes. So if Jesus can do it, why can't Melissa? Right. Which is like this woman. So I kind of wrote down everything you had to do to write a book, and I realized the content's extremely important, but it's really only about half of what you do. And so I called her up. I said, "All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to call you and interview you for the content. You don't have to do anything else, but you got to know what you're talking about." Because I'm like, I don't want to ghostwrite this. I'm not going to go learn about fashion or whatever. It's all got to come out of your head.
Now that's an important distinction because again, your ghostwriting is common, where basically hire somebody, they write the book for you,
and then you put your name on it.
Right, and
totally different.
That's a very different thing. Isn't it?
So I wasn't interested in doing that. She didn't want that either. She wanted her voice, her knowledge. She wanted her to basically get it out of her head and into a book so she could give to people because she's a really high-end consultant, and there were at a minimum she wanted to be able to help all the people that couldn't afford her, right? And so so I was like, I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of questions. We're gonna kind of go through this trial and error and see if it works. And she's like, okay, great. And it ended up working great. Like I got a fantastic book out of her. It was, all her ideas, her words, her voice. I didn't go learn anything about fashion or whatever. And then it did great. And this is how dumb I am. I was like, oh yeah, like she paid me like 10 grand. I was like, I don't care. Okay, great, thanks. That's awesome. For me, it was more about solving the problem, right? I was like, oh, I figured out a cool new thing, whatever. And then someone calls me one day and they're like, hey, can you do for me what Melissa did? Or can you do for me what you did for Melissa? And I was like, who the hell are you? She's like, oh, sorry, Melissa gave me your number and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? No, I'm not gonna, what? No, what? And they're like, well, I'll pay you, double what Melissa paid. I was like, okay, sure. And then she recommended someone else, and then I talked to someone about this and just kind of told them the story, just to prove how clever I was, and they tried to hire me. And then eventually my dumb ass realized when someone is trying to pay you for something you aren't even trying to sell,
right,
that's the definition of a business, right? And so I had a buddy of mine who would kind of helping me, and I was like, all right, here, you do I kind of walked him through how to do it. He's a good writer. You walked him through how to do it. Kind of built a process. He became the co-founder, and then I did a podcast about this that blew up, and we signed $200,000 worth of clients in a month, and I was like, I guess this is a real company. Then once we really got into it, we realized, okay, this is a big deal. This is a massive demand. It stretches way beyond books, and so that was 4 years ago. Now the company is called Scribe. We have about 40 full-time employees, another 100 plus freelancers that we work with. We've done about 1,000 books, give or take, including yours in process now. And yeah, that's where I am.
Wow. Ton of lessons along the way here. So
Right.
let's circle back a little bit. Have you ever given any consideration to what would happen or what would have happened if you decided that, wow, maybe my law, I got out of law school and I took a job and it started to work out? And that, you've practiced law for the next 10 or 15 years.
It's funny you say that. People often ask me, do you regret getting fired or whatever? I'm like, as painful as it was at the time, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because the reality is, everyone likes to tell stories about, they like to look back on their life and kind of craft a narrative that turns them into a hero. And I wish I could do that. But the reality is, I went to law school because I was a coward. As smart and capable as I was, I should have gone out and done something more remarkable. It's easy to go to, yeah, it's easy for me. I'm good at academic stuff, so it's maybe not easy for other people, but it was really easy for me. So going to law school was the safe path, right? And if I had stayed as a lawyer, even a few months, eventually you start getting those, $10,000 a month checks. And then you buy that nice condo and the nice car, and then you get the golden handcuffs. And I seriously doubt I would have had the courage to leave that money. I hope I would have. I probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Same with working for my dad, right? That just would have been a fat, cushy job forever. It was the best thing that ever happened to me was that I got fired because it forced me to look into myself and find the courage to go carve my own path, right? I really respect people who do that without having, people who can do that on their own are remarkable. If you look at most people who succeed in carving their own path, they're kind of forced into it. I was definitely one of those.
So, and this is what I think is really interesting, and I think that there's a big audience of people who have certain assets, let's say, meaning, wow, I can do well academically. It's coveted to get a job at Goldman or what have you. And my goddaughter actually went to Columbia, went to Goldman, but after a year, she's quitting, she's leaving for the reasons that you're describing. And but the idea is that that's so coveted that if you have that ability to get in, to go to the Ivy, go to a big investment bank, what have you, that something's wrong with you if you don't pursue it.
Yeah.
But did you find in your particular case that deep inside you didn't feel like this was right for you, but you were afraid to do something else, or you just didn't know what to do?
Man, the reality is when I was at that age, in my early 20s, I was about as unself-aware as you can get. So, I'm 42 now, and I feel like I'm just starting to actually become a self-aware adult, right? I'm a slow, some people are early developers. I'm a real late developer, at least, maturity-wise and emotionally. And I wish I could tell that story, right?
Yeah.
I wish I could tell the story where I had the courage, like what your niece is doing. if I'd gotten in Goldman, I don't think I would have quit, because how do you quit when you're making $250 a year and then you have $250,000 bonuses every year? I get why people get stuck on that track,
Yeah.
right? And especially you kind of nailed it. It's the status thing,
Yeah.
right? It's that everyone tells you it's a big deal to do that. And then so you do it and you think, well, I should feel important or whatever. You don't, because it's an awful job. You are just a slave in a nice suit, and like, make no mistake about it.
Right.
But having the courage to see that and leave that when you are doing it, that's real courage. A lot of people look at me and are like, oh wow, you've always had the courage to live your own life and whatever. And it's kind of true, I guess, right? But at the same time, I feel like I got real lucky, man. I got lucky being, I got kicked out of the nest, and so I had to. And when you have to, it's so much easier to do things that look from the outside like there's remarkable courage and perseverance and all that sort of stuff. I'm just one of those people that I feel like if I didn't have to, I wouldn't have. And I think most people are like that. If you can look at your life and you can say, because you just think, when you go the gilded path, right? You're living someone else's life. You're living the life you're told. Unless you like if you like it, great, ignore this.
Right.
In fact, why would you even watch this if you like that life?
Right.
Like, this is not your documentary, right?
Right.
But if you're on that path and you don't like it, then ask yourself, okay, whose life is this, right? What life am I actually living? Everyone tells me this is something I should care about, but if I don't, why am I doing it? You know, it's sort of like people ask me, how did you write all these best-selling books? A lot of the reason is kind of right voice, right time. A lot of it is luck. I mean, I worked hard. So much of it was luck. I feel like the only reason I'm actually succeeding now in my kind of second career is because I realized so much of my success was a lot of luck. It was me working hard, but taking I got a lot of lucky breaks. I'm not trying to rely on luck this time. On this time, I'm trying to like look at it holistically and think, all right, what kind of life do I want? How do I create that life? And how do I do it in a way that makes everyone around me better, the world better, that adds real sustainable value? Not the thing people tell me I should do, not the quick cash, not the cool thing, the thing that is, if you're playing the long game, is gonna work for me and my family and my community and the world, right? That's really hard to do though, man. The only reason I'm able to do it is because I kind of lucked into success. I've got enough money now, and I did a lot of work on myself, man. A lot of therapy, a lot of introspection, a lot of soul searching, and I realized, yeah, okay. Like, there was a time when I was like 30, 31, man, I thought I was king shit on Turtle Island. I thought I could do no wrong. You gotta remember, in 2009, when I was 32, there was a movie made about my life. Like, what a movie made about my life? What 32-year-old guy can handle that success and not have it go to his head? I'm not one of them. Like, I'm not the guy. That guy might exist. It wasn't me. Like, I had the biggest head, the worst. And of course, like, it caused all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to fail again, learn from that again.
Right.
No, that's, I wish I could tell you, maybe now I'm starting to have courage.
Yeah.
Like, understanding, okay, I'm gonna pass up the quick, easy cash. I'm gonna pass up, because I could do a lot of stuff that could make more money, whatever. Now I'm starting to, at 42, I'm starting to understand how things work.
Yeah, so now I'm looking at some common themes. One of them being that when you were writing these emails and they were coming back to you, that was kind of the signal saying, there's something here, you know? And
Yeah.
these are things you could never have predicted, saying, here's what I'm going to do. I've got a vision for how, it was basically, you started to write and
I was just trying to make my friends laugh.
you just make your friends laugh, and next thing you
That's
know,
it.
oh, some people are paying attention to
Yeah.
this, and it's coming back. There's something to this, and then the hard work came in.
Yeah.
You're sending in all the things, rejection letters,
Yeah.
and so you recognize something that was a potential opportunity. There's
Yes.
some gravity pulling
No,
towards
definitely. If I did one thing right, the two things I would say I did right is I will seize opportunities that come my way, right? And I will work on them and go. And there's plenty of things I tried that didn't work, right? We're
Right.
talking about the things that worked.
Right.
Because for every one that works, there's usually 3, 4, 5, 10 that don't, right? So every success story has those things that don't work that you don't hear about, right? I'm definitely willing to do that. And the one thing I'm willing to do that I think has really helped me is I'm always willing to go back and check my assumptions and check my facts and see if they're still true. And I may not want to, but I'm always willing to face the painful truths. You know, it may take a lot of pain, but I'm almost always willing to look at like, okay, like the reason the movie failed mainly was because of the decisions I made. Like as much as I would love to, and I could blame other people, but like all the people that I would blame are people that I hired for bad reasons. Like and so it's my fault, you know. And it's not one of those like we just take the blame no matter what. No. It was someone who was much more mature and self-aware could have easily made better decisions, and it could have been a huge success, right? Of course, I feel like it's the most ridiculous rich white person problem ever to complain about. A movie made about your life didn't do 100 million at the box office. You complain. It's nonsense. But the point is, it's still like those are the two things that I've always been willing to do is work hard on opportunities that come, and then always be willing to recheck. Is this actually working? Are my ideas right? And then change course.
Right.
Like I have no problem. I think X is the way. Something comes along, shows Y is actually the way, I will switch horses and go to Y right away, no problem. Like I don't tie my identity to my ideas or like my job, you know?
Yeah, and with the current business, it's also born out of basically people reacting to something that you had no concept that was a business and you recognizing it and jumping on. So this is
Late.
a little bit
It
of the theme.
but it had to be hit over the head with it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it wasn't even like
Yeah.
But it's funny, like man, like because
Can I say one more thing about that?
Yeah.
Also, I think this is what's hypercritical because how a single conversation, I call these pivotal experiences, that could happen in moments. They don't have to take days or weeks. It could be a moment in time, literally somebody just saying to you, you're not an entrepreneur. If entrepreneurs would solve my problem, not tell me how hard I have to work.
Dude, that was it.
Just,
It was a 10-second thing.
Yeah. And now the consequence of one statement, one chance happening, now 1,000 people have a book in the world, and many, many more to come because you're really scaling out.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to go much, much bigger. So life is kind of crazy like that. And this is the thing where, you know, the old adage, I'd rather be lucky than smart, because, you know, as you're saying, luck plays a role, but it can't be just luck. And it usually isn't just hard work or grit or, you know, perseverance or dedication or those things. It's some sort of weird combination. And I think, you know, so for people are out there saying, well, how do I, you know, what's the advice I could get? Somebody, you know, who said, I'm done, you know, with the corporate costume on. I really know this isn't me. I'm living in quiet desperation. I have to make a move. Or I've done well. You know, I've been at, you know, Goldman, or I've been a dentist, or I've been, you know, a professional. And but I'm bored out of my mind, and it's time for me to figure out something else to do. What would you tell them?
Oh man, okay, I get that question a lot. What I usually do is I start with, where are you trying to get? Like, tell me where you're trying to go, because a lot of times people who have that, like, oh, I hate my job, or I want to do something else, they're running from something. And if you're running from something, you're never going to get to where you're trying to go because you're not trying to go anywhere.
Right.
And so a lot of times with people, you can kind of unpack that, like, they just need a couple tweaks for some people, right? And it's like, oh yeah, that a couple tweaks will give me the life I want. For other people, it's a whole different thing. For other people, they maybe they're trying to find the tweaks to make their life good, but the problem is the foundations of their life are never going to be what they want, and no tweaks are ever going to change it, right? It's like the joke about, like, everyone's like trying to life hack their way to happiness. It's not how it works, right? You got to start with build a foundation that works. So yeah, my first question would be, what do you want and why? Where are you trying to go? And then I would just keep asking questions from there. It's not, because it's like, it depends what you want. My wife and I do this a lot, actually. We start with what do we want our lives to be like? And for us, our relationship with each other and our children is first and foremost and paramount, right? So the way that, from everything then, that is the base layer. We are going to be able to spend as much time as possible with each other, quality time, enjoying each other, you know, that's our foundation. So then what else do we want? We want to do work that is meaningful. And so we just keep building foundation, but every time asking, okay, so like, for example, my wife, she is in healthcare, there's so much opportunity in healthcare. It's like ridiculous how much opportunity there are to start businesses and to scale and whatever. But you know what? Her foundation is, I want to be a full-time mom first. I want a business, I want my own business, but it's got to be subservient to that goal. So she has a business, but instead of it doing $6 million a month, it does 60 grand a month, right? Because she does not a lot of sales prospecting. She doesn't try and like scale it or whatever. In fact, it's basically reached its max where she can kind of spend an hour or two a day on it. She's got her people that run it. She can spend an hour or two a day doing the owner type things, and that's it. And she can kind of be a full-time mom and pick the kids up from school and all those sorts of things that she wants to do. And there's not a right or wrong answer here. That's what she wants.
Right.
So she's created a life that gives her what she wants.
Is that the hardest part for people, just knowing what they want?
Yeah, I think so. I think most people, like I said, most people live a life that other people tell them they should. They live a life that they judge themselves by the expectations and respect and assessments of others. I think it's a deeply scary and difficult thing to, I don't want to say not care, but to put yourself first. Actually, I didn't even think about that. That's another thing I think I've done really well in my life. Almost like, it's one of those we talked about. It's almost, a lot of times for people who are really good at things, the things they're best at, they don't even realize they're good at them, right? Because it's so natural. That is something, it's one of the benefits of having pretty crappy parents, which I had. They weren't like abusive, they just weren't there. Right. So they were neglectful, right? And so having, like, there's a lot of downsides to that. The upside is you learn really early on that, like, you can't rely on, that it doesn't make sense to rely on other people to do things for you, right? You have to be very independent, which I've always been incredibly independent. And then you also realize that, like, other people's opinions don't actually matter that much. At least outside of, like, I mean, I'm like, I care what my wife thinks, I care what my kids think, etc. But, like, most people, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think. And I think most people are deeply obsessed with that. You know, what do the neighbors think? What does this person? What will people? God, I can't. My wife's mother is like that, and I love her, Granny, bless her heart. But so many things, like, why do you do that? She's like, well, what will people think if I don't? Who? Well, show me, introduce me to people, right?
Okay, so you gave advice saying, find out what you want, not necessarily an easy thing to do.
No.
But okay, now I think I've got an idea of what I want. And of course, I think another question that goes with that is, why do you want it, right? And that's what's your motivation in understanding that.
Yeah, I think that will help you figure out what you want, right? But you're always eventually going to get to a thing where you're just going to say, because I want it. Like, why do I want to spend time with my kids? They're 4 and 1.5. They can hardly even have conversations. Like, what? But because I want to, because I love them. And that's just a foundation, right? So, like, yes, like sometimes for people who don't know what they want, like the best thing that usually works is start saying something, I think I want this. Okay, why? And then you start to unpack and you realize, well, I don't really want that, right? So asking why until you get to a foundational thing where it's like, that's an axiomatic want for your life. And then understanding it can change. But once you make it explicit, now you know this thing is the thing I want. I tell myself I want. And as you go towards it, you can realize, you know what? I don't want that. That's not what I care about, right? And so maybe it's, this other thing. Okay, now you can go to that. So, but once let's say you have something locked in. Life is not easy, but it is simple. And that's one of the lessons, one of the things that took me 42 years to learn, and I'm still trying to internalize. Meaning simple to understand. Not easy to do, but simple to understand. Once you know what you want, go get it.
Right.
No, seriously. And everyone's like, well, it's not that easy. It is that easy. No, I have a buddy of mine who's like, he's like, I want to be a writer. Like, this has been his whole dream, right? And he like started a real estate company or some nonsense. Like something not related to what he wanted, because in his mind, he's like, okay, I'll start this company, real estate, and I'll make a bunch of money, and then I'll have the money go do what I want. And I was like, okay. So, and then of course that never works, because if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to be passionate about it. You're not going to work hard about it. And then, so I start walking him through. Like, he's like, well, like, I can't be realistic, Tucker. I can't go be a writer. Like, I've got bills to pay and whatever. And so literally, I'm like, what are your bills? And so we start walking through, and it's like, okay, so your condo in Cancun is more important than your dream. He's like, well, no, of course not. Obviously it is. Obviously it is. Like, why you have, like, you know, he's like telling me, oh, well, I've got, you know, a condo payment on my vacation house. And I'm like, get out, go away, dude. This is nonsense. You can't talk about a vacation house and your dream.
Right.
You get one or the other, at least when you're working towards it, right? Like, people are like, oh yeah, I want to pursue my dream and I want to do the things I love, but I don't want to sacrifice anything. Then it's not a dream.
Right.
Then it's just a nonsense fantasy that you tell yourself so that you can have the carrot to make you carry the load that you hate. Bullshit. I think almost everyone's problem they have in their life, almost all of them, and I would even put myself in this, are problems that they keep in their life to serve a purpose, right? And that includes a job someone hates, right? If you stay in a job you hate, it's because it is serving a need for you. And you know what? If the need is, I just want to pay my bills, okay, fine, that's cool. No shame with that. But don't complain. Like, don't say, I want to go do something else. You obviously don't want to do it enough that you're willing to change your life and adapt to that, right? It's simple to do. Go do it. And yes, you have to change your life a lot, and yes, you have to do things, and you have to make sacrifices, and you have to whatever, but so does everyone who's... Show me someone who just stepped out of the womb and just clocking right away, just making money and everything went smooth. Like, who does life just smoothly work out for in all ways?
Right. So it seems to be a lot of denial that's related to these things, and I hear the frustration in your voice, and I relate to it with having similar conversations with people who almost, they sound like they're whining to me,
Yes.
but, and they want this, but they will take no action to get it, and everything's an excuse.
You know what they want? They want the fantasy of it. They don't want the reality of it.
So other than your business that you're invested in, where else do you invest your money, if anywhere?
Yeah, so I did a lot of angel investing for like 3-4 years. So a lot of like 2012 to 15 or so, 16. So like a lot of that money is still out. I've had some pretty good wins, but probably half of that money's still out. But I don't actively angel invest anymore. Like my company is pretty much all where I spend all my time. Right now, investing, I've got decent money in just equities, right? Mostly high-level tech stocks, because pretty much all of them are undervalued. Amazon, Google, Facebook, they're all undervalued relative to the growth they have left. Which, by the way, I want to get this on camera. I'm just telling you right now, with Dow's 24, 25 right now, Dow 40,000 in the next 3 years. Just remember. Not forever, because after that, everyone's like, it's going to crash now. It's not going to crash now. There's about to be a massive influx of lots of big money coming into the U.S. equity markets. But you'll see. But anyway, so I'm going to stay heavily in equity for the next 3-4 years. Then after that, I'm not sure, man. The world's changing fast. And I really don't know. I've got a little bit in cryptocurrency, of course, because one of those cryptos is going to win, and it's going to be massive, but not much. I've got, I think probably my next play is to start investing in land, but not like real estate the way most people think of, flipping houses and stuff like that. Not that that's bad, it's just not my thing, and you just kind of have to have a different mindset for that. I'm thinking more sort of like productive land. I feel like the technology is getting to the point, and the world is getting to the point where it's going to make a lot of sense. It's going to be the cost of mass producing very healthy, very good food is coming way down. I think there's a spot for that. So that, and then also the other big thing, I haven't decided yet. The other big thing I'm looking at too is I feel like there are a huge bulk of businesses, small businesses, service businesses that are, not crazy profitable to do well. They're all coming up for sale. And so I may end up going into buying a bunch of, depends on the industry, but buying a bunch of those and setting up, a good system, and like I don't have to run them, but if you especially you modernize a lot of them, just basic modernization, modern accounting, payroll, using Zenefits and Gusto, basic things like that, plus some basic sort of digital marketing, you can usually increase 20, 30, 40% small business growth, get it to kind of a new level, and then increase profit pretty well. I haven't really decided yet, man, because I'm kind of in the phase of my life I'm in right now is I made a bunch of money in one phase, got out of that phase, kind of transition. Now I'm in a new phase, new company. We're kind of in the reinvestment phase, like the growth phase, right? So my company is profitable. We didn't take any outside money, but all the money stays in to help with growth, right? And then we're still in the phase where I'm still building out a lot of systems. We're hiring people, training them. So it's going to be 2 or 3 years before I'm able to like kind of be in the position where you are, where like you got your thing and you can kind of have other people run it. My company's not at that stage. When it does, then it'll be kicking off a lot of cash and it'll be something I can look at other things. But right now I'm mostly passive investing because I'm building my company, which should be a big cash cow if we can get it right. I'm the guy that like, I'm really good at seeing things early that are going to be big. Like I'm really good at like, or seeing opportunities and seeing a future before it's there. I knew with my writing, I at least at a certain point, not when I was typing the original emails, I was trying to make my friends laugh, but once, like way before anyone else saw it, I saw it. I knew with a lot of I invested in a lot of the companies that did really well. I saw a lot of that early. Crypto I saw pretty early. Not that I was the only one, but a few other, I see things early and I'm, not everything, but enough things. If I know the field, I see it early and I have confidence in my assessment of the fields I know. That's why I don't know about the land and stuff. I'm kind of learning about that. And I'm not sure about the bit. I'm learning those 2 fields now. And I may end up being like, I was wrong, this doesn't work. But I'm pretty good at seeing things before other people and then going all in on those things. And I do kind of like the Nassim Taleb strategy. Like most of my stuff is easy, passive, low risk, whatever. And then probably I'm not the 90-10 like he talks about. I'm probably more 70-30. I put a lot more in risky assets just because I'm younger and I know I've got a lot of cash flow coming. So I can play a lot of riskier games now and I can play for upside optionality now. That's kind of what I do. But it's not a strategy I would recommend for most people. It works for me. But because I do it a certain way.
So for people that now are trying to find their way, they've maybe had a failure or two, they're trying to find their way through the woods or they're getting discouraged. What's the gut check or what's the decision to say, I keep pivoting and moving forward, or maybe I'm not cut out for this entrepreneurial stuff? Any thoughts for them?
Decide who you want to be. No, seriously. Like there is no shame in realizing that you're not an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is not an easy thing, right? It requires a lot of skills that I think most people don't have, right? But if you decide you want to do it, then you need to go do it, right? Most people who, you said it in the non-whiny way, but most people who say that their version of what you're talking about are very whiny. Like I tried this, and it's like the people who go to the gym for a month and like, why don't I have a 6-pack now? It's like, well, it's the same sort of thing, right? I think most people don't really commit to it. They don't really believe it. And they're not really actually willing to pay the price. Like there is a price you have to pay. And it doesn't have to be a high price. Like there's a lot of little things you can do. You can get into, there's so many, like instead of being an entrepreneur, for most people, I think the better thing is to buy existing businesses and improve those. That's a way better way. What's it called? Acquisition entrepreneurship. It's a way better way to get started and learn business than trying to start a business. A whole different thing. So it's not like you have to go all out and burn the boats and whatever, but whoever you're going to be, decide I'm going to be this person and then commit to it. Say, okay, that means I got to learn a bunch of things. That means I have to do the work. I have to do the reps to develop the fundamentals. And most people don't do that.
Are you having fun?
With what?
Your life.
I wouldn't do it if I wasn't. I'm rich. Fuck this. I can do anything. Like, how the fuck would I do this if I don't like it? Of course. Like, if I did not like it, I would not do it. Yeah.
When do you feel like that started happening? Where you say, that I'm actually feeling, and maybe there's a little bit difference between having fun and feeling fulfilled in what you're doing?
Yeah, they can be different.
So at what point did you feel like things started becoming fulfilling?
What's funny is things have been fulfilling a long time. They're not always fun. Like, I would actually tell you that 70% of what I do on a day-to-day basis is not super fun for me. But overall, I really like it, So it's like fulfilling but not fun. It's mainly because of the stage the company's in.
Sure.
Like I'm doing the things that only I can do,
Totally
right?
get that,
And
yeah.
and a lot of them are really aggravating and annoying. But either if I want to win, I got to do it,
Right.
and that's just it, right? And so, but yeah, I would say overall my life's very fulfilling. You know what's funny is when my life is fun, I feel like is when I get the least done and I am the least productive. I feel like fulfilling and aggravating, like on different levels, are the right mix for me. Fun almost always doesn't work. Because the fun jobs are easy to fill, man.
Yeah.
Like the fun jobs are what everyone else does. Like the fun jobs are what my employees do. And bless their heart, I love them, they're great. But like you can hire people to do the fun jobs.
Right.
Like the things that I do and that JT does, my CEO, we do the hard stuff. The stuff that people aren't willing to do, that it takes either a lot of skill or a lot of grit and a lot of desire. But that's why we own the company. That's why we're in charge, right?
You know, and that's, I think, a really profound insight, you know, for people, because a lot of times people would look at me all the time like saying, God, it must be so much more fun what you're doing. You know, when I got out of my practice, started a technology company, got some patents, and started building out that company. Next thing you know, I've got a pretty large scale operation. I'm traveling all over the world. I'm giving lectures. I'm doing this. And one time somebody came to me and said, oh God, aren't you glad you got out of practice? It must be so much more fun doing what you're doing. I said, let me tell you what my life is like. I walk into my office every day, in my office, and it's a nice office.
Yeah.
I've got my executive assistant's office is attached. I sit down in my chair early in the morning, usually before other people are there. And that door opens and my assistant walks in and places a bowl in front of me. And that bowl is full of shit. And the only question is, how much shit do I have to eat today?
Yes.
Because my days are filled with shit eating. And then every once in a while, you know, when you achieve, the bowl of cherries comes.
Yeah, right.
And that's what you have. And it's a very similar thing. I think you're saying something that's very accurate. Is that, you know, it's not like people think, oh, it must be fun to be an entrepreneur, fun to own your own business. It's like, no, the fun jobs are the jobs. It's the people who are willing to do the stuff that others aren't willing. And maybe that's the question, you know, that you have to ask yourself. Am I willing? Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to have to fire people, you know, which is not fun? Am I willing to have to, handle the crises, you know, when they pop up, et cetera, and take, higher level responsibility?
One of my favorite quotes is, if you make hard decisions, you will have an easy life. If you make easy decisions, you will have a hard life.
Yeah.
And man, I've seen that play out so much with me and my friends. Like I'm always willing to make the hard decision.
Yeah.
And overall, I have a pretty easy, nice life. And so many of my friends, and fulfilling life, so many of my friends who always took the easy path, like they're in marriages they don't like, they're in jobs they don't like, they have lives they don't like, you know? And it's like, well, you're going to pay the price. The question is just when and where.
Right.
You know, like people like you and I are willing to pay the price up front with our work, and then we get the reward later. You get the reward now, you pay the price later.
Yeah. So Tucker, this is a lot of, I think, profound wisdom, certainly delivered in a unique way. You're a unique individual. Is there any final thoughts you want to leave the viewer with?
I mean, the thing that I'm starting to come back to more and more as I get older, is how simple things are. People make it complex because they, I think, want to avoid facing hard truths. And so if you don't like your life, or you don't like your money situation, or you don't like whatever, that's fine. But it's actually very simple to change it. Just decide, I'm going to change it, and then do the work.
Right.
Pay the price. What people try and do is make it complicated to find a way to not pay the price. It never works. Never works. Doesn't work. Every time I avoid the price, now I end up paying more later.
Yeah.
It's the way it works with life, man. Like it's simple to understand. Not easy to do, but simple to understand.
Terrific. Well, thanks again so much. This was a really stimulating conversation. I think a lot of people are going to probably watch this and start to reflect on themselves a bit. So thanks.
Of course.